Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Wildcard Devy Show. We are back once again with plenty of Devy goodness to talk about and plenty, dare I say it, don't tell people, of Devy badness because the world is falling apart around us. All of our first-round quarterbacks are failing. Those high Devy assets that you ignored us and you banked highly, you drafted with those first-round picks. They don't look like first-round prospects. Time to panic. Don't know, Jack, are you panicking?
I am not panicking, but that's because I listened to previous episodes of the Fantasy Wildcard Devy Show, and I am sitting pretty with my wide receivers and running backs in early rounds. But we will get to the main crux of the show a little bit later. First of all, how you doing, Phil?
Yeah, very well, mate. Very well. Obviously, it's nice to come back and do another show this time following an Alabama win. Obviously, the last time we were together, we had the debacle that was week one. Since then, we put 73 on Louisiana Monroe. And then this last weekend, the win against Wisconsin looked far more convincing. And the first kind of signs that, we might be able to make some noise in the SEC and see where we take it from there. It was really pleasing to see Ryan Williams back. Jeremy Bernard continuing to do what he does. And dare I say it, look, maybe it'll feed into the theme of this episode later, maybe we have a quarterback worth discussing in Ty Simpson.
Yeah, true. Good point. Ohio State were playing well after midnight on Saturday or Sunday morning, so I actually didn't catch that one live, and I'm probably glad I didn't. Sounds like Ohio State were good, but not great in a game against a team that are pretty good. So I actually got to enjoy Saturday afternoon and evening games without too much invested, which is quite nice. There are some really good games, and we're going to touch on some of those because we are Devy focused, but Devy only comes from a love of college football, and so we got to see some incredible games over the weekend and over the last 2 weeks. Really, we got a absolute barnstormer. Texas A&M beat Notre Dame 41 points to 40 in a game that I did not see hitting the over, but absolutely smashed through it within the first half. So fair play to both offenses. Really surprised that Notre Dame gave up so many points and so many yards with that kind of heralded defense that hasn't changed all that much from a year ago. But yeah, Texas A&M really took advantage of that man coverage that we keep talking about Notre Dame playing, and then one of our old, not on my roster, but old Devy quarterbacks messed it up for Notre Dame as Tyler Buckner fumbled the snap and the extra point was no good.
Yeah, it was a great game, and there's a couple of takeaways for me. Like, one, after our last episode, we questioned whether we should be worried about the usage of Jeremiah Love. Well, that game just goes to show to me he is back. We said it was just more confusing than concerning, the week one usage against Miami, and that we'd be looking for a bounce back to see him get those bell cow carries. Look, Notre Dame put up 40 points. Jeremiah Love had a score on the ground and in the air. He was back to his best, and he got those bell cow carries. If that is what we see for the rest of the season, then the running back one case in this next class is absolutely on lock. We've got nothing to worry about there. But then I also, how interesting that Texas A&M are an interesting team. Like, they are a team who I still don't know about the quarterback. But let's see how far they can go, because right now they're effective in all phases on offense. Like, they have two of the top five, I believe, wide receivers in the SEC. In Mario Craver, who's averaging an absurd amount of yards per game. And then Kevin Concepcion as well, who we've known in Devy circles for a while. But let's be honest, we were sounding the alarm bells in his second season at NC State, and now all of a sudden he gets that move to A&M. We talked about the impact of the portal and how it might help some guys. It certainly appears to be helping him.
Yeah, Yeah, and it was really nice to see him getting some snaps out in kick return game as well. He obviously took a 96-yard return to the house in week 1, I think, just showing what he can do with the ball in hand with a little bit of space. I think your point about Marcel Reed, the quarterback at Texas A&M, he's someone who makes enough of the throws at the right times. I don't think that necessarily translates to Texas A&M being able to do anything too major this season. I'd be pleasantly surprised. I'll happily watch the SEC be mixed up and turned upside down with the Aggies going on to actually cement the SEC championship game appearance, which they should have had last year. But I don't think he's one of the quarterbacks we're going to mention later as someone who's gained some experience, a bit less flashy, but is going to be productive in the NFL. I don't think he makes enough of the key throws. He is able to do it. It's not boom or bust, but Texas A&M will only go as far as he can keep making these throws on crucial third downs.
Yeah,
I'm not convinced the law of averages will remain in his favor. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Before we move on to our next game, I do just want to shout out another, in this instance, former Texas A&M quarterback, because one of the standout performances for me of the weekend was actually Friday night / Saturday morning here in the UK when Connor Weigman's Houston team laid waste to Colorado. It put the Buffs on notice. Connor Weigman was really, really good in that game. Look, he's worth mentioning because he's going to be sat on people's rosters. People are stuck with this guy and they thought all hope was lost. But he went 15 of 24 for 222 yards. But he did manage to run 2 scores in on the ground. He actually had 17 carries and 83 yards and took 2 touchdowns on the ground. So he didn't actually pass for any touchdowns. But there was a set of wheels that I think was an overlooked part of his game that he demonstrated against Colorado.
Yeah, I think it's something we never really got to see when he was at Texas A&M. He didn't really get the chance to show what he was doing on the ground, partly because he had a really good couple of running backs, well, when healthy, in his backfield, but also, Texas A&M weren't able to protect him particularly well. So, yeah, really nice to see Connor Weigman, and a real surprise to see him kind of flashing so early in the season because he's had so many injuries and obviously a couple of new playbooks to learn. So, really pleased for him. We'll see what happens with his kind of NFL prospects. I'm not convinced he can recover them. Certainly not to the heights that we hoped when we were drafting him as a 5-star freshman. But, more bricks on the road of the drafting early quarterbacks can lead you to, Death Valley.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a great segue there, because if we want to talk about a team that play in Death Valley, we can talk about Clemson, because in the kind of pictures of the weekend, if you Google Week 3 college football highlights, you are going to see the field in Atlanta, home of Georgia Tech, absolutely flooded with fans as the fans rushed the field because Georgia Tech beat our much-lauded Clemson 24-21 with a walk-off field goal. There's a lot to unpick at Clemson at the moment. They appear to be, pardon the pun, but paper tigers. There are certainly a lot more questions than I had in the offseason. I thought they were going to be the team to beat. I was very bullish on them and their prospects. We'll get to Cade Klubnik in a little while. But Devy performances of note, both the good and the bad. Bryant Wesker really appears to be stepping up in the absence of Antonio Williams. He had 7 receptions for 126 yards and a 40-something yard touchdown. I think it was
42,
in the 40s.
I think.
Yeah, and then he also had a longest reception of 73 yards. So that kind of shows he also did a lot of kind of short yardage work as well on those remaining carries. So Brian Wesker is looking really, really good. But it does beg the question, where is TJ Moore? It's a guy we both like, and at the moment he has the opportunity, but something just isn't clicking for TJ Moore at the moment. So, I mean, look, I've seen him now in the Tadpole Bowl, that kind of college football, got FBS kind of college football redraft tournament, if you like. He's been dropped to waivers because he's just not performing to a level where you'd want him taking a lineup space at the moment.
Yeah, TJ Moore is missing his. If you look at his stats in terms of targets and depth of target and kind of his usage, it is actually quite similar to Brant Wesco, but Wesco has managed to make a couple of explosive plays each game. So I am not panicking too much about TJ Moore as a receiver. I am a little bit panicked about him in this 2025 season and what he can achieve, and whether we are going to see him slide down in people's estimations because he's not going to put up the numbers that we were hoping he would, which would be a real shame. If he's not able to hit an explosive play per game, then it looks like he's limited to between 20 and 35 yards a game at the moment, and that is not at all what you are looking for out of, let's be honest, a receiver that we have touted as a first-round NFL talent. So disappointing, but definitely not laying all the blame at TJ Moore's feet. I think Brant Wesco is in a similar boat. He's just managing to break some of those plays away, which I think is credit to Wesco rather than a tarnish on TJ Moore.
Yeah. The other name to mention here at the moment is Adam Randall, converted wide receiver to running back, who is seeing the lion's share of the touches in the Clemson backfield. Really, really weird because of his size, his transition from wide receiver. He's big. He's a big guy that runs very upright for a running back. You may well be looking at C2C production this year if you've got him. But in Devy circles, he can't pass pro. He's not going to be an NFL caliber running back. So I still think what you need to maybe look for if you are an Adam Randall owner at the moment in Devy leagues is see if you can find someone that is not as in the know and send them his box scores. See if you can get anything for him because, you're flogging a dead horse as far as a Devy prospect goes, I think.
Yeah, I can't believe he accepted that move to running back. I think if he was being touted as, if he was being offered move to running back or find a new home, I think he should have entered the transfer portal because he's got no NFL future as a running back. Absolutely. And, we didn't see enough of him as a wide receiver to really make a judgment. I'm really surprised that he took that move and was keen to put all his eggs in a basket that he doesn't really fit in. Really disappointed that he did, and we'll see what happens. The other thing is it's not a great sign for the running backs in that room, like Ezio Mume, who we were I certainly was high on in last year's freshman running back class. And Gideon Davidson, although he got a few carries over the weekend, but it's not great that they can't beat out Adam Randall.
No, absolutely. But I mean, college level pass pro is different to anything these kids will have been asked to do in high school, and it's not uncommon to see that be the bit where freshmen struggle. We know they're going to be fine with the ball in their hands and the talent's there, but if we've sometimes got to remember these college offensive coordinators are trying to win college football games. They're not trying to appease our Devy rosters. They're trying to win games, and they're going to put the guy that can do the job best for their program on the field. But like I say, as far as Adam Randall goes, he's got no future as a Devy running back. But if you want to look at his box scores from the last 2 weeks, he's had 21 carries for 112 yards and a touchdown, and then 15 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown over the last 2 games. Send those box scores to an owner, another GM in your league who's maybe not paying attention. See if you can cash out. Take anything.
Yeah, take anything. And we've focused a lot on Clemson here. Let's give Haynes King his props. He took an absolute battering in that game. He ran the ball a lot. He threw blocks for his running backs a lot. And he passed the ball occasionally a few yards down the field. But he battled and he dragged his team to a really important win for Georgia Tech as they look to stake a claim in the ACC. I think they are an underrated team, and Haynes King will take them further. We spoke about a quarterback dragging a team we spoke about Texas A&M going as far as Marcel Reed can take them with those passing statistics. Haynes King is going to drag his team as far as he can with his rushing and short passing ability.
That's right. And another little shout out to a guy I really like, and I want to do the diving on the tape a little bit more because I'm not sure how high I am, but I'm really starting to like Eric Rivers emerging in that wide receiver room for Georgia Tech as well. Obviously transferred from FIU, and I really need to dig in a little bit deeper to see whether I like him as a potential late round sleeper from a dynasty perspective next year, because he's got a skill set that I'm intrigued by.
Yeah, good name to throw in. Good one to keep your eyes on. I think we're going to see a lot more of Georgia Tech on highlight reels, on games, hopefully on DAZN. I hate saying DAZN, it's definitely DAZN in my head, but I've watched those adverts too many times. So keep your eyes open on Eric Rivers, and yeah, we'll see whether he's a stash for next year's rookie drafts.
Yeah, and then the last big game from last weekend that we want to talk about, and this made me feel really good. So I wrote my weekly article for In Between Media, and I highlighted two games, I highlighted three, but two of the three games absolutely hit in terms of the games of the week. I mentioned the Texas A&M and Notre Dame game. I also mentioned Georgia and Tennessee, a rivalry matchup in the SEC that Georgia have long dominated. And whilst they might have sneaked this one in overtime, 44-41, it certainly wasn't the kind of dominant win that Georgia was perhaps expecting. But there was a lot of things that we can take out of this game from a Devy perspective. Where do you want to start? And I'll go the opposite way.
Yeah, I think let's start at the beginning and how Tennessee kind of raced out into a lead with Joey Aguilar completing, I think, 9 of his first 10 passes, scoring touchdowns on his first 3 drives, finding Chris Brazzell for explosive plays, not just scheming Georgia's defense, but really taking the top off them as well. I think everyone would have seen some of Chris Brazzell's highlights, and he's a name that's kind of been around. He's a receiver who has kind of been a key part of the offense without being the guy for any period of time. But wow, he looked great in prime Jalen Hyatt Tennessee days. That's the kind of role he had, taking the top off the defense, and he had the Georgia secondary second guessing themselves all over the shop. So a great performance from Chris Brazzell. I guess I would still count that as a breakout, a very late breakout. I think he's a senior.
Redshirt junior. So
Redshirt junior.
Yeah. Listen, I'm really glad he's the first name he brought up, because I think after that performance at the weekend, he is the name on everybody's lips. Height, weight, speed. He's almost 6'5". And whilst he's not going to run you a 4.3, he's going to run you a mid 4.4, 4.45, something in that range, which for a guy at that size is damn fast. And it's not just straight line fast, as he kind of showed in flashes last year. He's starting to show that he's got a little bit more in his arsenal as well. There are certain scouts and people within the kind of college game and college evaluators and NFL evaluators who you take notice of when they start to pick up on names. And a couple of guys that I really respect are starting to talk very, very highly about Chris Brazzell. And he's a guy, again, in Devy circles, I don't think he'll be taken anywhere. If things carry on going the way they've started this year, he could be the belle of the depleted rookie draft ball, if you will. For context, he played his first 2 seasons at Tulane. I say he played his first 2 seasons. He redshirted that first season at Tulane. He only made 1 reception for 11 yards that first year and then redshirted. He played his second year at Tulane and really broke out in 2023. He had just over 700 yards and 44 receptions, 5 touchdowns. Got his transfer to Tennessee last year and became a bit of a role player in that offense. 29 receptions, 333 yards. Through 3 games so far this season, he's already eclipsed his totals in Tennessee from last year. And yeah, he's tied his career high in touchdowns already with 5. So he's one of the most productive FBS receivers, full stop. And you know, when you look at those metrics, like there's normally already always some kind of group of 5 guy that's up there, kind of clogging all the numbers and skewing all the metrics. Not this year. Chris Brazel, Mario Craver, who I also mentioned earlier from Texas A&M. We've got guys from big SEC schools right the way at the top there. The SEC's back, baby.
We'll see. National Championship will decide whether the SEC is back. But Chris Brazel has certainly forced his way onto the scene. And we've also got a bit more clarity on that Tennessee running back room. I think Bishop has kind of taken control of it a little bit. I know he's a guy that we kind of split that backfield, didn't we, in the offseason, especially in drafts that we're doing, where I had my eyes on Peyton Lewis and you were a bit higher on Bishop. What have you seen from him in these first few games?
Everything we knew that he was, to be quite honest. He is the kind of north-south bruising kind of thumper in that backfield. The one that we didn't gamble on, who seems set on scuppering both of their kind of production or capping both of their production, is Star Thomas, who is also kind of very much as a senior throwing himself into the mix as well. He transferred across from Duke last year, where he had a good year. He had over 800 yards at Duke. And I think we kind of looked at his impact in that room. But yeah, I think in terms of production, if you've got them on C2C teams, they're going to eat each other's effectiveness. Devy-wise, I think Peyton Lewis has this skill set that is the most translatable to the next level. He's just going to need to wait for those 2 seniors to clear out before he's potentially got a bell cow role. And even then, is it really going to be a bell cow role with the way that Tennessee passes the football?
Yeah, probably not. But that is a future question for us to look at. Anything from the Georgia side that?
Yeah, absolutely. Really so Nate Frazier, although Dwight Phillips is getting a share of carries and Chauncey Bowen's popped up with 12 carries at the weekend, Nate Frazier is kind of leading that committee. He's the first guy out. He averaged over 5 yards a pop against a good Tennessee defense. Didn't hit pay dirt this time, but he's showing everything we thought we'd seen. He's a classy running back with all the traits that are going to transfer to the next level. I suppose the big story for me again is Zachariah Branch. It's really, really good to see Gunnar Stockton silencing some of the critics. I know that I was very much one. I still aren't 100% sure he's a bona fide Devy asset, but he certainly had his best game at Georgia, and he was getting help from his wide receiver room. And it just begs the question, why wasn't that happening with Carson Beck? Because Colby Young popped up with 4 receptions for 73 yards. It's great to see him boxing people out on the perimeter and showing some potential. But Zachariah Branch, for me, is the story, because we mentioned him in our last show as well. He was a guy that I was very much out on and telling people to sell high. And then you get the noise in the spring that he's performing well and that, he was taking camp by storm, and you go, okay, everyone's got their own beat writers with their own narrative. How good is he? We'll really see when the pads come on. And he's hit the ground running. 5 receptions, 69 yards against Tennessee with a touchdown as well. He did perhaps benefit from the fact that Tennessee were missing both starting corners in Jemod McCoy and Ricky Wildcard. I think his second name is not coming fast enough. But either way, they were missing their first 2 starting corners, and perhaps he got a little bit of luck thanks to that. But you make your own luck in this world, and that his release on that screen that he took home for the touchdown was excellent. And it's what you want to see if his skill set's going to translate to the next level.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how those wide receiver splits are over the whole season, because Colby Young is, obviously a very different kind of receiver to Zachariah Branch. Colby Young obviously had quite a few legal issues going on last year, let's say, without making any comment that have been cleared, that he's cleared to play. There's nothing hanging over him from to worry your Devy shares. But I'm really interested to see that usage, because we know that Zach Branch can do it on a screen pass. Let's be honest. We know he's got the shiftiness and the quickness and change of pace to take a protected pass to the house. I want to see how he does when he is targeted over the middle, when he's asked to run stop and goes. Can he create separation?
Sure.
When he doesn't get it given to him. So I'm still all in for him. I'm rooting for him. I just really want to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, like I say, how can you not love Saturdays in the autumn with college football, especially when they serve up thrills and spills like we saw in week 3? And of course, it's on to week 4. Both of our teams are on byes this week, whilst we await in-conference play starting in week 5. But now it gets serious. Now we're going to start to see divisional matchups and rivalry matchups, and it just steps it up another level again. Can you believe that we're a quarter of the way through the college football season already?
I saw that earlier today, and it made my heart really quite sad. But if we were going to choose a quarter of the season to be gone, I think it would be this quarter, where we've had a few really good out of conference games, but now we hit conference play where the rivalries are really intense and they pick up in regularity. And not that everything is about the playoffs, but those playoff places are on the line because we're in conference play. You got to earn a conference playoff spot, basically, don't you? So every game means a little bit more, because you could have lost 3 games. So I don't know if this would work, but you could have lost 3 games already and still win your conference and get into the playoffs. So not to make out of conference games meaningless, but I'm excited for the next 3 quarters of the season. Let's put it that way.
Without a doubt. Now, one of the things we'll need to answer over the kind of remaining 3 quarters of the season is which quarterbacks are going to emerge, develop, step up, which ones are going to give us more headaches, more questions. And look, since we last sat down together, the sky has been falling around some of our kind of biggest Devy names in terms of our projections. And I just figured this is a really, really good time to review some of those individual performances. Have a look at some of the tape, dig into where these guys are as prospects now compared to what we thought maybe just 3 or 4 weeks ago. And then to really kind of full circle and come back around to that kind of tactical conversation about how we draft our Devy quarterbacks, because we'll get people who have listened to us since day one who know very much what we think about this. We'll have other new listeners joining us who will be saying, yeah, but we quarterbacks are the most important position in the Superflex League. Of course, we want to find quarterbacks. So really, let's get into it. Let's set the scene. Let's set the table. We have long told you, do not waste those early picks on Devy quarterbacks. Okay. Look, we can go back, and we've said it time and time again. We can give you the names for every, I'm going to say Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence, like they've absolutely lit the world up when they came to the league. But for every elite college quarterback who then goes number 1 in the NFL draft, there's multiple stories like a Spencer Rattler, a DJ Uiagalelei, a Tate Martell, who were all considered future stars, but flamed out and never lived up to expectations. And for me, that volatility in those elite 5-star prospects has always meant, and I know you agree, that it is much safer to address drafting skill position players, stock up on wide receivers and running backs for me, and look at fixing QBs in other ways. Now, I certainly think recent events lend into that, but there's also now, and we'll get into it a little bit later, how NIL and the portal has changed the college football landscape. It gives us a different way of finding the quarterbacks that we might want for our Devy rosters. And we're just here to remind people that to find those right guys, you don't have to spend that elite capital. Okay. So yeah, Jack, where do you want to dig in? Should we look into some of the players first?
Yes. Well, I think you're being too kind. As you were speaking, I was just hinting at what our section was going to be on in time with your questions. And it is, don't waste your early picks on these quarterback prospects. And part of that is, I just want to say, from a fantasy perspective, we have no idea, even with those elite prospects you mentioned, Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence, neither of them, especially when they first entered the league, landed with a franchise that had a coordinator or head coach who utilized them in a way that made them particularly good for fantasy. So it's just another markdown on taking those top prospects. You don't know where they're going to go. You don't know whether a front office or a coaching system are going to completely ruin your favorite elite quarterback prospect, even if they come into the league all guns blazing. So, like you say, it's on the NFL side, if you can establish quarterbacks in a different way and get yourselves a proven veteran, whether you have to overpay or not, that's just by far the safest. It's safe, but it's also the most profitable way to go about building your fantasy rosters.
Absolutely. So look, to put some context to this and to put some names, if you like, behind it, I replied to a tweet the other day, and I got all in my emotions about it. Like they said, don't spend negative energy on social media. Well, they got me hard. Somebody posted a screenshot of the 24/7 rankings for the 2023 recruiting class. So that is the class that had Arch Manning. In fact, let me read you the 1 to 5. The 1 to 5 went like this. Arch Manning was number 1. Number 2, Nico Iamaleava. Okay, number 3, Dante Moore. Number 4, Jackson Arnold. And number 5, Malachi Nelson. Okay, and the tweet simply said, somebody needs to be fired. Okay, now my response to that, like I said, I got all big and brave like you do on social media. I said, look, it's simple. Recruiting pedigree is and a star rating is just an indication of what a school is getting to work with. It's the raw tools and possible talent that can be developed. What happens next, and this is the message I really want to get across to Devy players. What happens next is just like the NFL, and it's just like what you just mentioned there with Caleb Williams and Trevor Lawrence. They got drafted 1 overall to dumpster fire situations without the support around them to help develop that talent. It's just like that. Who are the coaches the player's going to be working with, and what are those coaches like at developing talent? What's the depth chart like in front of them? Is there opportunity for playing time? Is the coach on the hot seat and therefore less likely to put the game in the hand of a freshman? Are you going to a school that has got a blueprint for how to develop your talent? So for the life of me at the moment, I cannot understand the young man who's made the decision to go to Tennessee. Is it Fiden? The 5-star recruit who's just committed, he decommitted from LSU and has committed to Tennessee. Because that offense is not one that is going to develop an NFL talented quarterback. It's the wrong scheme and the wrong system. So are you going to a school with a blueprint for how to develop your talent into an NFL draftable player? Does the scheme you let playing in lend yourself to NFL translatability? But the one thing we don't know in all these situations is what is between the kids' ears. Yeah. Are they thinking of the NFL or NIL? Are they thinking about where they want to be? Take the young man this year who we've discussed at length, the young man who went to Cal, Sagapolitelli. Okay, I've nailed that name, by the way.
Jaron.
So he's gone to Cal and gambled on himself, transferred out of Oregon. He's playing lights out as a freshman over the first 3 weeks. And already the question isn't, have Cal got their next great quarterback? But people are asking where he's going to transfer next year. Now, that's a conversation for a little bit further down the line. You've got to also remember, and we said it with Cade Klubnik last year, and I know we're going to mention Cade Klubnik again shortly, development isn't linear for these guys. And when you're dealing with young men, there are going to be ups and downs along the way. Right now, I've got to agree with him. Retrospectively, that top 5 doesn't look great. But there is so much in this that I just want to reiterate, anyone that is just drafting based on a 5-star rating, this is going to keep happening. This is going to keep happening. There's got to be a way that you find your Devy quarterback, if you want a Devy quarterback, without just blindly taking the next 5-star off the list.
Yeah. Yeah, it's potluck if you take that approach. And that's fine if you are taking the last of the top 6 quarterbacks, maybe, because they're going to slide to a later part of the draft where your investment isn't as pricey and the players you're missing out on aren't as valuable. But if you look back at some of your Devy drafts from even just the season just gone, how many of the top 5 were quarterback prospects that have meant that talent like Vernell Brown was pushed down the board? And Vernell Brown is looking pretty good in a pretty terrible Florida offense right now. I would rather have Vernell Brown than take a quarterback number 1 overall. That's probably a bad example, probably not even over Bryce Underwood, because he's actually playing pretty well. I doff my cap to the Michigan quarterback. But you know what I mean? The next batch of quarterbacks, are you sold on any of them yet? Whereas Vernell Brown has put something on the field, and he wasn't even one of those top wide receivers or running backs that you might have missed out on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give credit to a couple of the early starters, but again, they aren't the guys that will come in next. The guys that will come in next were Deuce Knight at Auburn. Big, physical. It's almost like we're not learning our lessons, where we're taking raw dual threats with a physical skill set and hoping that we're going to make them football players. It's like people haven't seen what's gone on with Anthony Richardson. It's like, dare I say it right now, okay, we haven't maybe seen the development as we'd want it in Lenore Sellers through 3 weeks of the season. Okay, it's like we didn't see the Jalen Milroe experiment. Okay, it doesn't always translate. And what I will say is I am relatively impressed at the moment with Malik Washington at Maryland. And I am relatively optimistic by the play of Jaron at Cal. Both are playing incredibly well. But I think there's also something there in terms of the level of the school they've gone to. Yeah, they're playing perhaps out of that spotlight. But the guys that were getting drafted ahead of them, Deuce Knight, the young man, and again his name escapes me as I'm thinking off the top of my head, who went to USC to go play with Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, Hussein Longstreet.
That's the guy.
Tavian Sinclair. Nobody's playing.
Exactly. But they were being drafted high. And it just begs the question why, because there are guys out there maybe with not the potential ceiling, but have shown you more and are further along the development journey to make a more accurate prediction of where they might be at, that you can get for cheaper, significantly cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah, let's dive into that because we've got some examples of guys who we're not looking at the freshmen necessarily. We're looking at guys that should be reinforcing our commitment to them. Do you know what I mean? These are the 5-star freshmen who have got starting jobs who we believe should be reinforcing our opinion and boosting the Devy stock of for their owners, but aren't. And these are the guys that you might have gambled on. So Cade Klubnik, we were here. What a roller coaster he's been on. We were kind of out on him, and then he pulled us back in late last season, and we were really excited for what 2025 had for him. But he's taken some steps backwards this season. He's got an under 60% completion rate. He is struggling mightily whenever he comes under any kind of interior pressure. It doesn't seem to know what to do with himself in those situations. He's rushing the ball a little bit, which is great for fantasy if he can be on the field on your NFL team. But the passing game would suggest that he's not going to be making it to a starting spot in the NFL right now. So not a great investment there. Next one, and probably the biggest one, Arch Manning.
Yeah, man. Okay, so look, let's kick the puppy, all right? Because even in our off-season draft, like we didn't necessarily go by what we would always do. We went by what consensus would do and tried to give a picture of where the Devy landscape was at. And I think we took Arch 103 in a Devy startup mock. And
with the caveat, I think I can remember saying this, I would not pick at this spot. I would trade this spot immediately.
Absolutely. But here's what we've seen, right, through 3 weeks. We've seen a guy who has completed 55% of his passes, has a 6 interceptions to 3 touchdowns ratio. But when you watch, right, week 1 was a terrible matchup for him against Ohio State. And fair play to that Ohio State defense, because I genuinely believe they had him seeing that many ghosts that 2-3 weeks later, he is starting to second guess himself.
Mm-hmm.
You watch a kid who is shaky in his mechanics and his fundamentals, which we know he's going to have been well coached in. We're seeing poor decision making and just enforcing the issue. It really, really is bizarre. We've seen flashes of promise with his legs, but right now he just looks a little bit scared. I think, a little bit deer in the headlights and a little bit scared. Like I say, Matt Patricia's defense in week 1, you've got to give it credit to him. Really put him on the back foot, and it's left him. Look, let's just say it how it is. Texas should absolutely demolish UTEP and San Jose State, and they didn't. He started well against San Jose State. He completed 9 of 12 passes, but as the game went on, he, again, like I say, started to force the issue. He threw a pick with 38 seconds left in the second half against San Jose State. It was 3rd and 3. He was in a good situation. They could have kicked a field goal, and he chose to force a pass that wasn't there. It gets intercepted. He could have just taken the sack and lived to fight another day. But he chose to force a ball that he should never have thrown. It was a terrible decision when you watch it back. San Jose State gets the ball back. They're set up for a field goal before halftime. Now, it could have been a lot worse. It was only a field goal. But it was a decision born out of confusion, losing sight of where he was at in terms of game management, and just not what you'd want to see from a guy that is supposedly a Manning and of that kind of cerebral makeup. Then you get to the UTEP game, and it almost felt like coaching took the game back off him. He wasn't trusted to be the guy as they established the run and went run heavy. Look, they've got Sam Houston this weekend, and you would hope he can shake some things out, air some things out, and and get loose, because after that, things get really tasty for him, because he goes back-to-back against Florida and Oklahoma. That is a tough stretch with two big-time defenses. I'm worried about some of the mechanics. I'm worried about the connection with Ryan Wingo, because although he's found Parker Livingston, he seems to have developed a nice rapport with Parker Livingston. He has used Dante more sparingly, but I really feel like the connection between him and Wingo needs work. It needs work, because there's passes that they're throwing to each other, that have been thrown to Wingo at the moment, that you look choice routes. There was a choice route against UTEP where he targeted Wingo, and Wingo ran the wrong route. So it's not all on Arch Manning, but that sync between your 5-star receiver and your 5-star quarterback has got to be better. It's worrying. It's worrying. Like, the sky's not falling. There is plenty of time. What's working in his favor is there isn't anybody in college football who has as big and as good a coaching staff, as good a network around him as Archer's got. If he can't put it right there with that support in place, yeah, I don't know what to say. But I'm certainly not out. I just think, like I said on the last show, we're guilty of insanely high expectations based on nothing ultimately. And as a community, we're only going to right these wrongs if we draft that little bit savvier. You wouldn't be feeling anywhere near as anxious, as worried. It wouldn't be as headline worthy if you took Arch Manning in the 3rd round rather than the back end of the 1st, which he was going in some supplemental drafts as a freshman, as he came into college football. Like, there's a time and a place. Like you said earlier, if a guy falls and all of a sudden you go, do you know what? In the 3rd round, in the 4th round, I'm okay taking that pick. Cool. Because then if the development doesn't come, you're not as worried, right? But if you have wasted a top 12 pick and that development doesn't come, that's a different story.
Yeah. I think your point about the expectations being so high for Arch Manning are obviously glaringly true. He was a front runner for the Heisman before he'd thrown a pass this season, before he'd started a meaningful game, before he had taken on a team that he knew he was going to be the guy, not in an ego way, but he was going to be the quarterback. He was going to be the guy that was driving that team, and like you say, building that rapport with his wide receivers and building relationships with his offensive line and taking all the questions from the media. Before all of that happened, because he was pretty well protected as he was Quinua's backup, all of that has hit him at once. And I think we hoped we would see, not necessarily in that Ohio State game, but certainly in the San Jose State and UTEP games, we'd see those building blocks and that confidence start to come for him. Well, I think we're going to see a lot of him against Sam Houston, which maybe Sark would prefer not to do. If we'd seen more, if Arch Manning was feeling more confident, then you might only see him for not even a half of the game, because Sam Houston are dreadful. Like, they have been rough rided by everybody, especially through the air. So I think we'll see some good things from Arch this weekend. It's going to be really interesting how long is the game for, and what we see. I don't want to just see highlight passes from him. I want to see some of that the footwork looking good, the connection with his wide receivers, hitting receivers in stride, putting the ball where they can grab it, not putting it on receivers who then have to do something special to earn the yardage. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's all on him to do, and I understand people's nerves, but again, you're only nervous because you overspent.
Yeah. But if you were here,
who should we
if you were here, you didn't. The next one it's a guy that we can't avoid, unfortunately, this week. It's DJ Lagway out of Florida. Florida have put us back in the situation we were in 12 months ago, where we were really questioning whether Billy Napier had any future with the program. I wasn't convinced he would survive last time. I think I actually said he was gone, and Lagway might test the portal. I cannot see Billy Napier surviving. Mostly it was that South Florida loss, because Florida looked terrible in that game. But we're not here to talk about Billy Napier. We're here to talk about DJ Lagway. And his unfortunate outing came this weekend against LSU with some dreadful statistics which backed up, they came from some terrible decision making. He had 5 interceptions, which I'm sure everybody listening and watching already knows. But DJ Lagway had 5 interceptions, and 4 of them were absolutely dreadful throws. He threw his first interception into triple coverage. He threw his second interception into double coverage. He threw his third interception again into triple coverage. And he threw that 4th interception into the path of a corner who had given all the signs of jumping the route. I saw it come in before the snap. And I am not an expert reader of a defense. It was coming all day long, and the decisions that Lagway made were just dreadful. I didn't see many terrible things with his footwork or with his mechanics. They were really bad decisions.
Yep.
And that kind of comes with the territory of playing on a bad but improving football team, where you're being expected to be the savior. Florida were expected to start their revival this season, and that puts a lot of pressure on a guy who has missed nearly all of in terms of being fully fit, he missed the entire offseason. He wasn't healthy. He wasn't able to throw for significant chunks of spring practice. He was handing the ball off, and that was all he was allowed to do. There are so many questions about Lagway's health and what he should do going forward, whether Florida is the right place for him, whether he should even redshirt this season. He's got one more game. They've got Miami this weekend. He can play in that and still redshirt. His shoulder's clearly not right. Okay, and the situation he finds himself in is so unideal for a quarterback with that much talent, where, like you said, the variables include a coaching staff that might not be there. And even if they are, they're going to be making decisions to try and stay in position rather than necessarily what is best for the development of their players. He is injured, clearly injured. And there are so many other questions that then come with that. Is it the right decision for his long-term future to move away and redshirt? It would be very unpopular at Florida, but I can imagine that won't put people off trying to tempt him their way. I think he could certainly get a move that really benefits him. And just it was not a good game, but there's a whole load of factors surrounding DJ Lagway that make me uncomfortable. From a Devy perspective, your investment has tanked probably further than Arch Manning's, because Lagway doesn't have that name brand to help save him, but also because you mentioned Anthony Richardson. This is a guy who's got the athleticism and comparisons of the big arm to Anthony Richardson. I think people are. I don't think anyone's buying DJ Lagway right now. Let's put it that way. And you're not getting your investment back right now.
No, without a doubt. But I'll be honest with you, I don't think all hope's lost. Look, you've got to put it, and you've got to put it blunt and tell it how it is. He lost them that game because although LSU are 3-0, including those 5 interceptions, the final score was only 20 points to 10. Right? You take 3 of those interceptions away, and Florida are right in that game.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's got to hold his hands up and walk back into that locker room and said, you know what? That one's on me. But context matters, and you really, really hit the nail on the head for me when you talked about his development. Effectively, to me, although he was thrown into game action last year to help out when Graham Mertz went down, he didn't spend any time before that, taking first team reps. And then he was thrown into game action. There was good, there was bad, there was ugly. And we said, look, let's not judge him on that. Let's wait until he's had a full off season and then watch what he does. He didn't get that off season. To me, I mean, I watch him now and it feels as though we're still watching a true freshman in terms of the development. I feel the traits in terms of the passing and the mechanics are better than an Anthony Richardson, a Jalen Milroe. I think he has got more than just the deep ball, and I think we've seen it in flashes. For me, this goes back to this idea that the progression is not linear, and that some degree of patience should be afforded to him. The irony of that is Billy Napier and his team might not have that same luxury to afford him any patience. What I would say is, whilst I don't think the sky has completely fallen around DJ Lagway, this is not the week you need a bounce back game against one of the hottest teams in the country in Florida. Stacking back-to-back bad games could be a different kind of outlook altogether. And Miami are going to come into this one salivating at the prospect of being able to heap more misery on their in-state rival.
Yeah, and Miami's defense is flying around at the moment. They've been really, really good to start the season. And Lagway has struggled to read those defenses. Even in the games he's played this season, we've seen him throw a lot of short passes underneath because he doesn't quite know which areas of the field he can target when he sees the certain coverages coming at him. I think Miami are going to throw all kinds of confusion and disguises at him, and I am concerned for what that will mean happens this weekend for him. But I would love to be proved wrong. I'd love for him to shake it off, like you say, go into that locker room, own that he lost them that game, and say, I'm not going to let it happen again. Yeah, without a doubt. But it's going to be a sticky couple of weeks for them, that's for sure. But again, you're more nervous depending on what you spent. Yeah. There you are. Unfortunately, I don't know anybody that's got DJ Lagway for something that doesn't feel risky right now. But anyway, I know I have a couple of shares, and I'm gonna look back now. Bear with me. Let's have a look just how worrying the situation is. We should turn this into the Price is Right, higher or lower than a late first round pick. I didn't spend that, but then I didn't draft him this off season. Okay, I think that's the key thing here. Let's go to that one. I'm fairly certain I have him there. 2024 draft. Okay. So in the 2024 draft, I broke my own rules, although I didn't. I always preach, I'm happy to spend it if I've got an extra second round pick through a trade, which is what I did. I took him with an acquired second round pick that wasn't my own. It was the 207. That is absolutely fine. That is a perfect place to take a top prospect. So, all right, we haven't caught you out. I always think when we do this, it's a shame that we don't have any leagues that have a mid-season Devy draft, because this is the prime opportunity to pick up some of the guys that we are going to preach about. Maybe that's a twist on a Devy league that we should add in somewhere along the line. But for those of you who are in Devy leagues that aren't going to have a draft between now and the NFL draft, here are some guys to be looking out for rising upwards, because you may not have them in your league. Some of them will not be rostered. Okay. We talk about the guys that we would rather invest picks in because they've not cost us as much as DJ Lagway, Arch Manning, Cade Klubnik, etc. The first one is a guy who we've spoken about at length, so we won't spend loads of time on him. But Carson Beck is having a great start to the season. We mentioned that Miami defense flying around, playing lights out. The offense is doing pretty well as well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, without a doubt. Now, since we last spoke about Carson Beck after his week 1 performance against Notre Dame, he's had wins over USF, and they've looked really, really good, and he has settled into a rhythm. He's settled into a groove. He's playing really well. The last weekend, he threw for 3 touchdown passes, albeit with 2 picks as well. But he's on a hot streak, and he is showing that development. Look, ironically, he probably wasn't available in your Devy drafts, and you're probably too late. That buy window now will have well and truly gone. But if you got in on that buy window, if you listen to my off-season work, and you're an avid follower of the Bill Parcells methodology, he was the guy this year that looked like the breakout candidate. He then had the transfer. We've seen how senior transfers have helped guys reignite or even kick on a gear from where they were previously. He looks to be the next one to take an advantage of that. And you've probably missed your boat. Because I can't see an owner wanting to get rid of him right now. I did a mock on the hot seat last week with Mags. And what a difference a week and a bit makes, because I took Cade Klubnik at 1 and said, until someone else shows me they're better, I'll still take him in a super flex. But I did put Carson Beck in at 12 and said that if there's anybody who is going to make you eat your words and potentially be even higher by the time the draft comes around, it's going to be him.
Yeah. Excellent stuff. The next guy we're going to talk about, Sawyer Robertson. So this is a guy who will fit the mold of someone who is you've picked up for cheap, or probably is still available because he's not been on Devy radars much. He was not a highly rated recruit coming out of high school. Sawyer Robertson finds himself at Baylor and is in that scenario where you've got a good quarterback, a terrible defense, and you're going to see some significant highlight reels and statistics put up by him this year. And that is one of the things that can attract NFL attention to a guy who's in their final year in college, who already had some highlight throws on tape. So Sawyer Robertson, so far this season, he's had 2 high-profile games. So a close loss v Auburn, but in that game, he threw for 419 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was certainly not the reason that they lost that game. And then a dramatic comeback win against SMU, away at SMU. He completed 34 of 50 pass attempts, which tells you how this game went, for 440 yards, 4 touchdowns, again, 0 interceptions. This is a guy who is putting NFL throws on tape as well. This isn't just gimmicky, get the ball to your best playmaker and beat lesser defenses. He's put some NFL throws on tape. He's athletic. He's a skinny, taller guy, so he's not going to be, a prototypical dual threat quarterback. But he is a good threat on the move outside the pocket. He can make throws on the run. The thing I want to see from him, or the knock on him, is that he can't keep velocity on his throws when he's moving or when he's off his spot. If he's not set fully, there's sometimes the velocity comes off those passes. That hasn't mattered so far because he's been able to find guys in space, and there's a certain level of intelligence and reading the field that comes with that. But Sawyer Robertson, a guy who you can keep an eye on, certainly didn't cost you very much and is right now getting first round NFL questions. I wouldn't say buzz, but people are asking the question because we're all looking for the next crop of quarterbacks. So now would be a good time to sell him if you have him already.
Without a doubt. Great advice. I want to talk about Dante Moore at Oregon.
Yes, please.
So obviously, this is a guy who, again, could fit the mold depending on what you spent and when you drafted him. He's a really interesting case study because he is a former 5-star recruit who obviously went to UCLA as a day one starter and had a very, very, very tough freshman season, which included him getting benched towards the back end of it. And after his first season, what I will give him credit for is he lost the starting job. And so he transferred out of UCLA and took a position at Oregon where he sat behind Dylan Gabriel for a year. And all you can say is that did him well. He's benefited from that process because now his pocket presence, pre-snap command, his ability to read what's going on, his processing speed, they're all much improved. And Dan Lanning and Oregon now are reaping the benefit of that. It really, really has made a big difference. He is what he's lacking from a fantasy perspective, however, is he's lacking a rushing upside. Mm-hmm. He is that situational pocket passer, and he isn't going to give you a great deal on the ground. However, we've seen that can still breed success in some situations. He's got a quick release and arm strength that allows him to drive the ball into tight windows, throws a beautiful pass. What's really interesting is the guys on Oregon's roster seem to really be gravitating towards him. They're really, really pleased with how he's leading the team, and that always projects well for a guy when he's going through evaluations. The big thing for me with Dante Moore is he's the perfect case study. Because he had that high draft profile coming in as a freshman, people likely spent high on him. And within a year, you were questioning whether or not you'd absolutely burn a first-round pick, potentially, or a high second-round pick. Now it doesn't look completely lost. He projects to me as a serviceable game manager of a QB, system dependent at the next level, but he could have a career as an NFL starter. Maybe not a high upside fantasy asset, but he's got potential to be a player at the next level, no doubt about it. There is nobody at the end of his freshman season in a Devy startup draft that was drafting him at all. So you've seen a guy who was going from probably borderline end of first, early second, to not being drafted at all, not being touched. Do not want any part of that guy. He goes and he sits. He comes back in now and he's looking way more ready in a more supportive environment. Go back to my rant on social media with that guy before. A 5-star is all well and good until you know where he's going and what he's going to be molded by and who he's going to be molded by. Now we seem to be seeing benefit. Now, you might, if you were in a Devy startup draft this offseason, have looked at the prospect, have looked at the fact that he's sat for a year, looked at the fact that he was going to Oregon and going to be the starter at Oregon and gone, you know what? In the 4th or 5th round, Why the hell not? I'll take a flyer there. Now, all of a sudden, that looks like a much, much safer investment with a potential return on investment than if you drafted him as that 5-star freshman.
And that's what we're preaching here, isn't it? This is, if you invested in Dante Moore early, you're still not sure that you've got what you paid for.
Exactly.
But if you either drafted him in the last year or two, or you took advantage of the value dip when he transferred to Oregon and it was made clear that he wasn't going to start, that's where you have gained value on Dante Moore. And the trend that we're looking for players like Dante Moore is transferring and gaining experience at a school that has a track record of developing quarterbacks. You look at who Oregon have sent to the league in the last few years and who Dan Lanning has coached into the NFL. And that's a pretty good resume, Bo Nix being the most recent of those guys. Arguably Dylan Gabriel, but obviously we have not seen him start for the Browns. So it's a good example. Obviously, someone could come and beat us with a stick and say, well, I spent a first-round pick and now I'm happy. But there was a stage of life where you were really, really unhappy with that decision-making process.
Let's be honest. They're lying. They're content. What they're happy is they're not happy that they spent a first-round pick on Dante Moore. They are happy that it has not flamed out in its entirety. And that is a very, very different type of happy.
Absolutely.
That's that meme, isn't it? With the guy with the mask on and with tears behind it, telling everybody he's happy.
Smiley face mask, crying tears behind it.
That's it.
We've got two more guys that we want to touch on before we finish tonight. One of those is Jaden Mayava. So this was a 2-star prospect, I believe, who started his college career at UNLV and then transferred to USC and sat behind Miller Moss. That's it. Miller Moss had the starting job at USC for the year that he transferred in, but there were thoughts that he had the talent to take over that job. And so this is a one for the little guy, the guy that doesn't get the big 5-star rating. This is someone who had some of the traits, but not the recruiting pedigree that we are warning you against. Jaden Mayava transferred, won the job, and he looked a bit shaky, let's be honest, in his first season, or the back half of that first season at USC. But he has begun to really benefit from the tutelage of Lincoln Riley, which is not a surprise. This is a guy who has probably the best reputation certainly over the last 10 years as a guy who developed quarterbacks and is able to work on the skill set required for guys to make that next step into the NFL. And Jaden Mayava's mechanics have improved in his time at USC. Most importantly, his decision-making has improved tenfold. There are throws that you will see him making in his first season at USC that he absolutely should not have made. Even those like the boring decisions to just throw it away and live to fight another down. He's doing that with increased intelligence and maturity. Jaden Mayava is someone who I own in quite a few campus to Canton leagues because I thought he was going to take over that USC job, and that's profitable for college fantasy. I'm really excited about what that could become as draft buzz rises and whether I can sell him. And again, we're not saying that these guys are going to be NFL starters, but these are better investments with your Devy picks than some of the guys we've touched on.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, I'm going to stick my neck on the line now, and I'm going to say that my next one is going to be an NFL draft pick. And this guy is the proof in the pudding that if you look around for guys with a prospect with production, maybe not the recruiting profile or the pedigree, but then seek a transfer to a bigger stage to test their talents and then step up and deliver, like these guys are the guys that can go boom. So I want to talk about John Mattia. John Mattia, and as you were talking then, knowing that I was about to get into this conversation, I had a look again, same draft that I mentioned earlier, same league where I talked about where I took DJ Lagway the year previous. I'm going to give you some names. I'm going to give you some names of quarterbacks that went before John Mattia in this year's 2025 Devy draft, supplemental draft in this league. Lenoris Sellers, Bryce Underwood, Keelan Russell in the first round, Sam Levitt in the first round, Tavian St. Clair in the first round. In the second round, Fernando Mendoza, don't mind that one. In the third round, Houston Longstreet, Avery Johnson.
Eesh.
In the fourth round, Deuce Knight. Before, at the 4-12, a guy took John Mattia. Now that is how you win Devy leagues. And I hate saying that because it's not me, right? But that is a pick that wins leagues, right? Let's just talk a little bit about John Mattia, right? When you watch someone who it doesn't always feel right, the watch. Sometimes, trying to think of an example, right? Happy Gilmore swinging a golf club, all right, with the ice hockey style on the pitch. The mechanics don't look right, and the purists will tell you it's awful, it's not golf, right? When you watch John Mattia play quarterback, you get some of the same vibes. Yeah, it doesn't always look pretty, but what I will allow him is the moments of magic and the pure gamer baller in him, for me now, transcends, and the way that he wins and the way that he drags everything out of every play transcends some fundamental lapses. I have got no doubt whether it's 2026 or 2027, he is going to be a star. And he is just living proof. Last year he was playing at Washington State. Huge, like mega levels of production at the FCS level. Transfers to Oklahoma. But it's not just that. Not only did he transfer to Oklahoma into the SEC, his OC went with him, right? His OC, Ben Arbuckle, that he worked with at Washington State, has gone to Oklahoma with him. They know how to make each other work. If you're going to invest in stock where you know that guy is getting developed, look for that guy whose OC went with him as part of the transfer. I'm not saying it's going to happen an awful lot, but the signs were there that this transfer was going to work and that he's going to step up and deliver. And through 3 weeks right now, can you name me a better QB in the country?
I'm not going to try.
It's a league-winning move. And the point is here, maybe the 4-12 was really, really late. But I bet when you look in other leagues, you get a similar story. People investing in, and I'm going to say them again, Houston Longstreet, Deuce Knight. I'm not knocking these guys. Who knows what they can be? But the point is, right now, we don't know. We had a good indication what John Mattia was going to be, yet people just passed on him for the sexier name with that star rating, ignoring what was being put on tape.
Yeah. And we both loved this transfer in the off-season. I think we spoke about it at length on and off the podcast. And underlining how good the combination between Arbuckle and Mattia is the state that Washington State are in without the two of them, which is not great. They got destroyed by North Texas at the weekend. I think they gave up 60 points to North Texas at the weekend, which is slightly alarming for the Pac-2. This move, like you say, this wins you leagues. This wins you value that you just cannot reach. You can't reach the value profit of this move with a Deuce Knight.
That's it.
You will never get that level of return on investment from Deuce Knight when you take him in the second round. I think actually in that draft, getting him in the third round, that's pretty good. I'm quite happy to pull the trigger on Deuce Knight and Houston Longstreet in the third and fourth round, but I would have taken John Mattia before both of them. And yeah, this is what we're underlining. We preach it. Now we've got some evidence to back it up from the season we're currently in. I think we have talked ourselves blue in the face about this strategy, or just the avoidance of blowing your first round pick, because they are valuable. You can pick up alternate players that will be game changing for your NFL roster, and some of these guys are not going to be.
That's it. Even look again. Let's finish on the maths. All right. There are only 2 at most in the vast majority of leagues that are ever going to play in your lineup week to week if you're playing a Superflex league. All right. And that's not to say that every Devy league is going to be a Superflex league. The majority are. But you can start 1 QB, 1 Superflex. In the vast majority of leagues you playing, you can start 3 receivers plus a couple in flex spots. Yeah. The maths just says fill those slots with those high round picks. I don't know what more we can tell you. Like, let's get out of here. Let's tell everyone where they can find us. All right. They can chew the fat over it. Get in touch with us on X at Wildcard Devy. Come and shout at us. Tell us we're wrong. Tell us your success stories drafting QBs in the first round, and we'll tell you why you're wrong. If you don't already, you can follow the entire team on @FantasyWildcard on X and YouTube. You can catch all of our back catalogue. If there's a show you've missed, if you think you want to fact check us, you want to call us out, did Jack say that he'd trade that 103 in the mock draft? Well, I'll tell you what, go back and look, all right? Help us bump those views, all right? Follow the entire team on X and YouTube, all right? We look forward to chilling out, watching some more college football, stress-free weekend our teams aren't playing, all right? We can just sit back and take the entire slate in. We'll see you guys again after week 5. Jack, say bye to the people.
See you later.
Peace.